So I started here right after Arena came out. So I wasn't here during the genesis of what the Elder Scrolls is. But what it aims to be then and now is this wide open role-playing game. It actually started as a gladiatorial combat game, which is where the name Arena comes from. And there were teams, and then there was a map added where you go to different cities, and then, well, okay, you can walk around the cities. And it slowly became this. The name The Blades that we use in the game was one of the main names of one of the gladiator teams. Makes them a little less sexy now. They're just gladiators, not these dragon hunters from thousands of years ago. But some of the games at the time that inspired it, some of them are, people don't remember anymore as well, like Darklands from Microprose, Legends of Valor, an SSI game, which where you could, had a very detailed town. The whole game, I think, was in a town. Is really good. Ultima Underworld, the idea being, what if there was Ultima Underworld on a epic scale? And Arena, to this day, is one of my favorite games. Partly because I didn't work on it originally, I think, so I can see it differently. But it's very elegant in how it presents how big the world is. Daggerfall then brings the first one I helped on. The character yourself, to get a lot more depth, that's the one that adds the skill system and changes the whole paradigm from XP to, you will get better at what you do as you do it. And I think that was a real moment for the series that has kind of defined how you play the games now. But like I was saying, we go at it each time with, let's not just look at the last one and say, what does it need? I think most people, most fans will look at it and say, it's great, you should change the leveling, add spears, add crossbows, add this, and add some more races. And I usually approach it from, well, I want to know what skills are superfluous, that we should fold into something else to make the choice of what your character is more meaningful, make that choice more meaningful, and how are the races different? I think 10 races is enough. How is playing an orc different than playing a high elf, or those kind of things? Because I think the basic nut of the game, which is I'm going to make the person I want to be, and then explore this world that is very real to me at the time I'm playing it, and fantastical. How does that game react to what I'm going to do? And give me an outlet for whatever kind of character I want to play, and kind of that adolescent power fantasy of what I thought I was doing when I played Dungeons & Dragons and what I thought I was doing when I played Ultima. And what we can do with technology, it seems like every time we do, because there's this gap between them, we do have the ability to reboot it again and present that stuff, even though it's your first person, you have a sword, you're smacking things, it feels new again, just in how it looks, how it's presented, what the mechanics are. I think the series getting popular was, in one hand it's a gradual growth, on the other hand there are jumps because of these big gaps between the games. I think there's 6 years between Daggerfall and Morrowind, so it obviously takes a big jump there, but there was not much of the classic Elder Scrolls out between those time periods. Oblivion really hit another level of people playing it and responding to it. That when that came out, you could feel it. There's this one forum I go to a lot, the NeoGAF forum for gaming, and they had a thread on Oblivion, and I think I forget how many views it got, but it was like an order of magnitude higher than any other thread. Where I was used to in Morrowind going to a forum, which is usually our own, and I could sit there and I could probably read most comments that our fans were posting about the game. And when it came to Oblivion, it was too much information. I couldn't even comprehend it. So that it did become a little bit like, okay, what problems is the game? Like trying to find the actual problems. Eventually that stuff bubbles to the top, but initially it was hard to get a read on how do they really feel about the game. I can tell you a lot of people are playing it, and in general they seem to like it. That was the time where you felt it go beyond the people who were classically interested in that kind of game. And Lord of the Rings had come out, between that gap, right around the end of Morrowind. to then oblivion. Fantasy became a popular in a different way again, which I think helped as well. If you look at the Elder Scrolls lore, it does have an authenticity and uniqueness to it throughout the games, and that's been a progression over the games. Sometimes we'll make a conscious decision to make something, oh, this has been done this way, we have to do it differently. I really like how we treat our dwarves, that they used to be elves and they're long gone. You see their ruins, but you don't know quite what happened to them. Any theories about what happened are all in game speak. It's one thing we're careful about is any of the lore and everything written is in the voice of these narrators that are in the world, so they could be wrong and you get conflicting reports. But there are things that we have a different take on. Dragons, we have a very different take on. So on one hand, we like fantasy and we like dragons, something we've always wanted to see done really well in a game. And so we're trying that now. But the way they, classically you have a dragon and he breathes fire. Well, now our dragons are speaking this ancient language that are this dragon language that creates fire or creates cold or creates wind or slows time. Things like that makes them pretty unique. So we'll take something, like that or the undead and twist it a bit where it's still familiar to somebody, but it does have its own uniqueness to being Elder Scrolls and to the culture and lore of Elder Scrolls. And one of the things that helps with Skyrim is that it does have a really nice culture to it, while still being something that people look at and it suspends their disbelief, like, well, this feels like, a place that I'm comfortable in, I understand it. It has some classic things to it, but then you see these, epic cities that have been carved into mountains by dwarves long ago, these guys have moved into, and when you inspect it with your eye, it has this history to it that you don't quite understand. But at first glance, it feels like just a well-done classic fantasy city. I think one of the things that sets us apart, and it might be our PC heritage, is we still try a lot of crazy stuff that sometimes we shouldn't try, and we'll have some successes with that, we'll have some failures with that. We think very big. We will then back our way into making that really playable. So we have these big grand ideas, but we make the minute-to-minute just feel good in your hands and make it fun and make it rewarding. So that, because we play a lot of games, I think we're known for doing role-playing games, but when you ask us what games we're playing, it's a very eclectic mix of things. I play a lot of sports games. I play racing games. I prefer role-playing and adventure games, but I play action games, and all of that stuff, and all the guys do, filters into what we're doing. So there's, at this base level, we walk this line between an action game and an adventure game and a role-playing game. We don't focus too much on, well, you would do it this way in a role-playing game. We do what feels right to us, and to make the 20-minute activity of going into a dungeon just very, very playable, despite all of the, you can go to town and people can talk to you and all of that. So I think those two things together, the minute-to-minute, it feels good like a game, and the big idea and the just how grand all of that is, those two things together I think are what set us apart. So if someone says, they see Bethesda Game Studios in the box, they sort of know, like, there's going to be a big crazy thing in there, and I don't know if it's going to work great, but it's going to be big and crazy and cool in some respect.